Hello, in this video we are going to create a Vaadin Boot application completely from scratch. So let's create a completely blank project in Intellij. Let's call it Vaadin from scratch, and we'll use Java and Gradle and yeah, Kotlin, why not? And let's create the project. So now Intellij will basically create a completely blank project, no sources whatsoever, just an almost empty build Gradle script. So let's see. Let's wait until Intellij downloads and processes everything, and we will eventually populate the project with sources. Let's actually use the newest Gradle, and let's use the newest JUnit. And that's about it. Alright, so Intellij is still doing something. Right, let's re-import the project one more time. Alright, let's start then, shall we? So, Vaadin Boot. It's basically a way to boot up your Vaadin applications without having to resort to Spring and without you having to download any servlet containers or whatever. So a really easy way to download and run Vaadin applications. So let's start by adding the Vaadin Boot dependency into our project. So that would be here, and let's re-import. Perfect. Now we have Vaadin Boot available. We can use it. So we will introduce this main class into the project, and let's see what happens. Package, example, main class, and let's paste in the code. Alright, and let's debug the main method. The project is building, everything seems to be in order, and we can't launch it because we are missing the Vaadin servlet. So let's fix that. We can simply add the missing servlet and actually the whole Vaadin framework, but by simply adding the Vaadin core, and I think that the newest is GitHub Vaadin flow. I don't know. I remember from the top of my head it's 23.2.7. Right. Okay, now we have Vaadin on the class path. So yeah, we have the convaadin something something, so that looks promising. Let's relaunch the application one more time and let's see what happens. So it fails again. Right, if I state the resource web app root, it doesn't exist. Okay, so that's something coming from the Vaadin boot, right? So make sure to add an empty file named source main resources web app root. So we'll do that. Web app root. All right, let's run the application again and let's see what happens. Oh, actually it started. So let's open the page, the localhost 8080, and service unavailable for some reason. Right. Yeah, but there is no exception in here. So we can't actually learn the reason why the Vaadin application or Vaadin the framework failed to bootstrap. But we have these really peculiar lines here in a way that SLF4J is not basically initialized. So even if there would be an error, it wouldn't get logged because there is no SLF4J logger. So let's fix that. So Let's add yada 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 logging. Let's add the SLF4J simple. That's more than enough for our purposes. And let's actually create a configuration for the logger, simple logger.properties. So file properties, and let's paste in the example configuration file. Alright, now we should have SLF4J on the class path. Let's see what happens. Let's reload the application. Okay, now we are getting someplace. Ensure that you have so we are missing the float built-in for the JSON file. This is a very important file for Vaadin, because it basically configures Vaadin and tells Vaadin whether it's running in production or development mode, and where to download npm and all that stuff. So this is definitely something we need to add. And this is something that the Vaadin plugin will add for us. So let's kill the application and let's add Vaadin, was it? I don't remember. Let's Google. Vaadin Gradle plugin. And this should be the one. So 2327. So this is what we should add to the plugins DSL. So let's do that. So now let's try to build the application. Well, okay, there are no default tasks, so we have to add the build. So now you could see that very briefly that there is something called Vaadin prepare frontend being run. So that's a task offered by the Vaadin plugin, and what it does, it actually it adds the Vaadin generated resource route additional, and it actually creates the flow build info for us. So we are running not in production mode, and the npm folder is here, and so on and so forth, yada yada yada. So now we have the file. So let's try to run the application one more time, and let's see what happens. Right. Okay, something is actually being initialized, so that's really encouraging. But we are missing core Vaadin files, so we need definitely to implement an app shell, and we definitely have at least one route. Otherwise, you know, there would be nothing to navigate to. So let's do that. So my app shell extend it implements app shell configurator something. Yeah, this looks promising. Yep, that's the one. So this basically configures the main Vaadin page. You can add all sorts of PWA, body size, viewport, whatnot, all sorts of annotations, which will be basically then added into the body element of the HTML. And we'll add a very simple route. So main route, vertical layout, constructor add new h3, hello world. Great. Okay, let's reload the page and let's see what happens. Okay, this looks really promising. So that we can see that Vaadin is building a so-called client bundle, which is basically a huge JavaScript blob, which contains the client-side code in JavaScript or TypeScript for all Vaadin components that are built in. And we could not navigate to the main route because there are no available routes. So let's fix that. And actually, let's test the hot redeployment. So I'm pressing Ctrl F9, which basically I'm just running the build project. Zero class is reloaded, so that's probably not going to help us. So we'll probably have to restart the application, and let's see what happens. And I don't want to run this stuff from Gradle. Actually, it looks like that I'm running it from Gradle. Um, build and run use IntelliJ. This, yeah. This way the memory footprint is going to be much smaller because we will run the main method directly instead of running a Gradle and then a main method from the Gradle itself. So now what IntelliJ should do is that it should run Gradle to build the application, but it should actually run the main method directly with this huge command. So that's exactly what's happening. So that's a good thing. And right, so we should have the main root and the app shell, so everything should now be in order. Ah, great! So we have the most bare bones Vaadin application up and running. Let's play it, around with it a bit. So actually, let's test the hot redeployment functionality. So basically, you should be able to modify the source files and then hit Ctrl F9 to recompile and rebuild and redeploy, and 3 classes reloaded. That actually looks really encouraging. So let's reload the page and we can see that the code is actually being redeployed to the running Jetty server. Pay no attention to this Java Live reload unavailable because actually it works. So let's demote that one and let's dismiss that. Right, so so we demonstrated that the hot redeployment of the Java code works properly. So now let's demonstrate that actually the hot redeployment of the front-end files work as well. So let's create a small CSS files, call my CSS, and if we add a class name red, then it should make that thing red, and we need to CSS import CSS my CSS. This is basically a path nested in the front end folder. So CSS/my CSS, and we add a class name red to the header element. So let's test whether these actually worked or not. Okay, so we don't see the red thing, and we can see that the class red has been added properly, but we don't see the CSS file being applied. So we probably need to restart the server. So you can kill it with by pressing the enter, exactly as told here. Press enter or Ctrl C to shut down. And let's launch one more time. Now the CSS should actually be registered and compiled into this client-side bundle thingy. So let's test that one. Perfect. And now we have the red background applied. Let's change that to, I don't know, light blue. And let's see what happens. I just saved the file, and actually Vaadin noticed that and took care of reloading the page for us and reapplying and recompiling the CSS and reapplying it. So now if we inspect the element, then we can see that it has a background light blue, and it comes from where? It comes from this style, which is inlined into the web page.